Welcome back to your nightmares, my children. This is Mr. Midnight speaking. I welcome you all to my humble abode. Today, I will be sharing with you yet again some Skinwalker stories to keep you up at night. I hope they fill you with fear and sorrow because I feast on fears and sorrows. Let's begin, and always remember that darkness always follows. I will now leave you with my narrator, so enjoy.
Number 1. Weird observation, disturbance, window tapping, lights. I don't know if this belongs here, but I feel like it bears mentioning. I, 25 at the time, female, experienced what I can only imagine is an otherworldly occurrence when I first moved to the Sierra Nevadas about 4 years ago. I had been living in South Lake Tahoe, CA, for years and spent a decent amount of time outdoors hiking, camping, and just generally enjoying the beautiful place I was lucky enough to call home. Now, I don't scare easy. I'm used to being by myself, and I carry weapons with me everywhere I go. Being a 5'2" and 110-pound female, I go out of my way to be sure I can protect myself. There were many people in the outdoor community who told me to be careful on trails and in the forest. I usually do these things alone, save for my trustworthy, though somewhat cowardly dog. But I never felt as uncomfortable, confused, and downright afraid as I did in my own apartment one night when I finally relocated away from Tahoe to the city of Reno, Nevada. I had moved to Reno to get away from the isolation of living in Lake Tahoe, and though it is only about 60 miles away, it felt like a different world. Now, the city itself isn't huge, and I was living in the north end of town, which is surrounded by high desert foothills and is somewhat sparsely populated compared to the more urban city center. But I never felt as if I was out in the boonies or anything of the sort. I lived alone with my pup, and we liked our little apartment. So to set the scene here, it was early fall. The sun was beginning to set at a much earlier time of day, which was exemplified by the fact that the city sits in a valley, so sunset seems to approach much faster than in other places in northern Nevada. My apartment sat above street level, with a window in the kitchen next to my stacked washer and dryer that looked out into an alley, maybe about 10 feet above the small street that went beside the small fourplex building. It was dark outside, and I was alone with my dog doing laundry. My apartment layout was an open concept. The living room kitchen area was separated by a wall which had a huge space cut off into it that you could see through to each room with. The washer and dryer tucked around one corner, and the aforementioned window was to the left of that. With the openness of the space, the darkness outside, and the amount of overall windows the apartment had, if it was dark outside and I had lights on, it looked like I was living in a fishbowl. Anyone or anything could see right in. I made it a point to always close my blinds because of this, save the small window looking out the alley. I didn't mind keeping those blinds open because I liked the fresh air, and someone would essentially need a ladder to reach me had they been determined enough. As I was removing clothes from the dryer and turning to plop it onto my couch to begin folding, I realized my dog was acting incredibly strange. He didn't want to cross over the line from the living room to the kitchen, which was marked by a change from carpet to tile. There was only a few steps. He seemed incredibly hesitant and began whining and burping out small concerned woofs. At first, I just thought he was anxious for whatever reason, He is known to be a bit of a weenie, but then out of nowhere I sensed this immense and insatiable feeling of dread and displacement. I had my back turned to the washer and dryer, and the small alley facing window. My dog sat facing me, almost looking past me, and his clear anxiety and frustration began to build as I was asking him what was wrong. He began barking, a full alarm bark at this point, and as soon as he did, the sense that someone or something was observing me took me over and caused my blood to run cold. My logical response was, someone must be watching me through that window, the only window that has open blinds, the only window anyone could possibly see me through. So in one fell swoop, I reached for the overhead drawstring for the light and turned it off and faced the window to confront whoever or whatever was intruding on my life. As soon as the light clicked off and the room was dark, I saw what I can only describe as a perfectly round light, about the size of a small cantaloupe, directly across from me on the other side of the window. It didn't glow like a lamp or light though, its edges were perfect, and it did not hover nor vibrate nor move at all. At this point, I was too stunned to move, and my fight, flight, or freeze response had engaged so quickly I had no time to really recognize or rationalize what I was seeing. I was looking at this thing, and it was looking back. I felt cold, confused, my hair standing on end, my heart racing. My dog had gone into full freakout mode and was jumping and barking and generally causing a ruckus in the living room as he could see this all. The light seemed now to realize that I was able to see it, and it looked as if it backed away, or at least grew smaller in size and moved to the right of the window. It flickered twice and then disappeared. It didn't buzz away or fly away. It didn't zoom out of vision. It was visible, not visible, visible, and then gone. As soon as I realized the light wasn't there anymore, I opened the window fully and poked my head out to see what was going on. Maybe someone was up at my window with a flashlight. Maybe someone in the neighboring buildings had seen something and would be out checking for themselves to try and solve this odd mystery. Nothing. Not a soul. And what felt like deafening silence, I closed the window. As soon as I shut the window, I heard a solid 3 knocks on the larger window by the front door of the living room. As mentioned before, those blinds were closed, and though from the outside looking in it's likely clear someone is home because the lights were on in that room, no one could possibly know it's me, alone, in my apartment, right? I wasn't expecting anyone over. It was too late for solicitors. No one had any reason to be at my house at that time, and I wasn't going to open that door. My dog had rushed to the kitchen as soon as the light outside the window had disappeared, and he was in what I can only call full defense mode. Now, my dog is an absolute wuss. I've seen him run away from cats, get spooked by bags blowing in the street, and he generally stays right by my side on hikes and while camping to protect me. This pup seemed ready for war, hackles up, eyes alert, growling at the front window now. I stepped into the living room, grabbed my gun with one hand, keys with the other, and slinked back to the kitchen and out the back door to where my car was parked. I threw the dog in, started up, and raced off to a restaurant across town where I ordered to-go food and ate in the front of the seat of my Subaru. We car camped in a Walmart parking lot that night. I returned to the apartment the following day. My laundry is still on the couch. No apparent signs of anyone trying to enter the place. Everything seemed normal. I never experienced any disruption in that place again for the 1.5 years I lived there afterwards. I have no idea to this day what I experienced, and it wasn't until I shared this story that I heard the knocking and sense of being observed was a somewhat common phenomenon that people relate to encounters with skinwalkers. I don't know what happened that night, but I'd mark myself incredibly lucky if I never had to experience something like that again. Number 2. Skinwalker sighting. To start this story off and to give a little insight about me, I am an 18-year-old female who grew up in Michigan and have lived in this country for as long as I can remember. And for heads up, this is a long story, so bear with me. Now back to the story. On one particular hot summer weekend, me and a couple of friends, including my boyfriend, let's call him Tony, and my older brother, let's call him Brad, decided we were going to go camping for the weekend since it was such a nice warm week. Tony's parents had owned a cabin way out in Ludington, surrounded by a huge wooded area with a personal lake and no neighbors for at least 4 miles. But being stupid teenagers, we didn't really think about that. All we were ready for was to party like any normal teen would. Well, after being there for 2 hours, our fun had started. Tony's friends had brought tons of alcohol and weed to last us for the weekend, so we wouldn't be bored since we had no service and only movies to watch. After about 12 a.m., it was pitch black. We had a huge bonfire going. It was a total of 6 people, including me and Tony. As we talked and laughed about upcoming events in our lives, we were so distracted that we didn't notice that my brother had literally frozen his eyes on one section of the woods. Mind you, we were all intoxicated and high at that time. Eventually, our talking ceased when Tony realized his friend and my brother had an emotionless expression. "Hey dude, you alright?" he asked Brad. Silence. Brad didn't reply or even make any movements that would indicate he heard him. After that, I started to get scared as well. As the other 2 girls there, it took a lot for my brother to act that way. Eventually, I was the first to catch on that he was excessively staring into a certain spot in the woods. I turned my head and followed his gaze the best I could. And when I finally caught on to what he was staring at, my heart dropped. Right there was at first look, it looked like a dog. At least that's what I thought. It was some person's dog that wandered off is what I thought. But then my brain kicked in and I realized there wasn't neighbors for miles. So how could there be a dog? My mind started to race for a while. Tony still tried to get Brad to speak or even move. In one motion, this thing stood up tall. And when I say tall, I mean bloody gigantic. It had to be at least 6 feet tall. Everyone saw it. How could you not? The other 2 girls and the other boy with us gasped as they finally grasped why my brother was as still as a stick. No one moved for what seemed like hours. Tony was the first to talk. "No tail," he mumbled. No one heard what he said but Brad. And I swear to you when I say his eyes widened as big as pan saucers. That freaked me out immediately. "What did you say?" one of the girls asked. "It has no tail," he hissed back. My heartbeat stopped. He was right. There was no tail on this thing. Suddenly my clouded alcohol mind cleared up in a fraction of a second when I finally realized what this thing was. Now I understood why my brother was basically scared. This thing was a skinwalker. My instincts kicked in right then and there, but before I could knock the F out there, the thing let off a terrible stench like rotting meat before screaming inhumanely. The sound was enough to scare out everyone. My brother was the first up out of his chair and started shouting native words to the creature while I told everyone to get inside. No one questioned me when they seen just how dead serious I was, especially Tony. He's never seen me so scared, so he knew it was a bad situation. We all hightailed it into the cabin with my brother in tow, still shouting native words at this creature, which seemed to keep it at bay while it gave us enough time to get inside. He slammed and locked the door before turning all the lights off, and grabbed a special ash from the kitchen counters and started throwing it at every window and door while chanting. Of course, he had everyone freaked out and basically in tears at that moment. After he was done, no one said a word for a long time. All of us still in shock. He grabbed out that pistol and had it posted by him for hours. Everyone was entirely too shaken up to even question what happened. He must have fallen asleep eventually because I woke up to my brother packing all our stuff into the two cars early in the morning. I understand why. We had native family, we knew what we were dealing with, and we knew it would come back, and maybe not alone. Before we left, I did a blessing on the cabin and spoke a few calming words to the still very freaked out girls. We left as soon as everything was packed up. To this day, we still haven't explained exactly what happened to our friends that night, and they never bothered to ask us either. And now I will be reviewing each story. Firstly, I would like to thank both authors for letting me use their story. The first story was written by Midday Moon and posted to the subreddit Skinwalkers, and the title was Weird Observation, Disturbance, Window Tapping, and Lights. Now this was very detailed and very easy to read and very structured as well. It was very good. I enjoyed reading the story. On the scarometer, it was scary because skinwalkers are generally scary, and the way it was written showed how much fear was in the OP while the OP was experiencing this, especially with the window tapping and the lights and the knocking. Yes, it sounds like a skinwalker. So I give that a 10 out of 10. Now, the second story was by Queen of Horror 666, and the title was Skinwalker Sighting. Now, this was not written as good, and it lacked in structure, but it was really good with regards to the concept and the story. The fact that the friends are outside camping and they see a dog that's huge and it stands on its hind legs. It's very scary because that's what skinwalkers are basically. So it was a good plot, I guess. And if it's real, it's very scary. And I would also probably leave that area and run far away. I do not know why these guys love going near forests and woods. I myself would not. Thank you for listening. I'm going to leave Mr. Midnight to do the outro. So I'll see you very soon. Make sure you subscribe, like, and follow all the socials. And bye.
Welcome back to your nightmares, my children. This is Mr. Midnight speaking. I welcome you all to my humble abode. Today, I will be sharing with you yet again some skinwalker stories to keep you up at night. I hope they fill you with fear and sorrow because I feast on fears and sorrows. Let's begin, and always remember the darkness always follows. I will now leave you with my narrator, so enjoy.